Welcome back, everybody. Episode 9. Week 9. And what is this? The week of May 27th. I am your host, the infamous ex-chief of the city of East Cleveland. Folks, I had a major faux pas when I was doing post-editing on the episode 8 of Tony's interview. I'm learning the post-editing using new software, I believe, DaVinci Resolve. And I would make a rendering, and then I was like, hey, I want to add something, and I would go back and add it. And before you knew it, I had like 5 different renderings, and unfortunately, I accidentally uploaded the wrong rendering. You didn't miss any of the content, other than the fact that there was supposed to be a segment explaining that his interview had not completed, or and that it was going to continue on to the next episode. That didn't happen. But I'm hoping you guys were able to see and or listen, or both, to episode 8. Great speaker. Tony is a great speaker with a great message. And we're going to continue that message. Reference Dawn Pasela, the injustice of her death, or lack of investigating her death. And again, I always have to specify there was somewhat of an investigation, but it was extremely minute. Which does bring me up to one of the points. I did, prior to actually even starting the episode or even reaching out to Tony for the interview, on May 13th, and I'm going to hopefully be able to put these up for you, these emails. On May 13th, I had requested, through public records request, the investigation from Parma Police Department, or again, their lack thereof, investigation on the death of Dawn Pasela. And I had actually made a recording, and I had to trash that because they actually did respond to me on Friday, and they are using the excuse that they're inundated and have lack of manpower, and they haven't been unable to respond, because I had actually sent it off on May 13th. I received 0 response from them, even a response indicating that, hey, we received your response and we'll get to you. Didn't even reply to me with that, which is generally customary for a municipality. Once they receive a public records request, that they at least let you know, hey, we got your request and we're going to try to attempt to fulfill it. That didn't happen with Parma. I then followed up with them on May 22nd, and again, just confirming, hey, can you please just let me know that you received the public records request. And they emailed me on Friday, again, claiming that they were inundated with all sorts of requests. And I don't know if they didn't specify specifically the Dawn's request or Dawn's case, but they were inundated with requests and did not have the manpower to fill them. And anybody who knows anything about public records requests, and honestly, this is becoming... I used to receive them all the time as chief, but actually requesting them sort of new concept for me. But I am aware that manpower is not considered by the court to be a cause for reasonable delay. And the public records request in Ohio, the law is actually somewhat vague. It just basically states that the party, municipality, whatever government agency you're requesting the information from, they have a reasonable amount of time to respond. The Attorney General's office has posted on their website that their interpretation for their policies on responding is 3 business days. And I will tell you, as part of this show, mostly relative to the investigation on the East Cleveland cases, I have requested several other things totally unrelated to Dawn's case, and I've gotten it relatively quickly back, and it seems that Parma is delaying. And again, it's not a voluminous, what the law considers voluminous, meaning that I'm requesting all sorts of like things that aren't normally requested. I basically, I'm asking for the police report, any type of photographs or recordings, any interviews were made relative to witnesses, any forensic reports that they may have, communications, email, text between investigating officers, any search warrants or affidavits that were made. And that's really all I'm making as far as a request from them. And that should be all on the case folder. So not sure what the issue is or what is causing the delay with that. I also on Friday made a request through the Cuyahoga County Medical Examiner's Office, and and again, I sent the request, and within like 10 minutes they responded saying, "Hey, we received your request." So anyways, bring us back into where we had left off on episode 8. I had posed the question to Tony, or just asked for some clarification that relative to them wiring Dawn up, they being the Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office. And again, if you missed episode 8, you're going to have to go back. You're going to have to. There's a ton of information. But we're going to cue it off essentially leading up to the point where Tony is talking about Dawn being wired up, being basically placed in a special investigations or a special investigator's role. Dawn wired up, correct?
Right, they had her wired up. They never turned over the tapes. I mean, that's the other thing, too. I mean, Rule 16, federal rule, state rule, same thing. Criminal Procedure 16 says if there's anything with the defendant's voice on it, it must be turned over. Now, Kim Corral, our brilliant lawyer, she says this is a Brady violation because I'm telling Dawn on tape, and I would tell you, and I've told everybody, that Mark Bennett and Dan Caceres can take this indictment and shove it up there you-know-where. Okay, that's what I said. So it's exculpatory that I'm not really telling Dawn, and we're out at bars and restaurants or at my lawyer's office or at my office. And, she is, asking me questions about the case. Well, I'm not admitting that I'm involved. So, I'm saying I'm innocent. So they maybe thought they would catch me saying I'm really guilty. I really want to be a celebrity. I really want to go on court TV or whatever. I'm saying the case is absolute rubbish. We're talking about how to prove innocence, not reasonable doubt, but proving innocence. And so they never turned that over because A, it was inappropriate to bug our trial strategy preparation, and B, there's nothing on there that is incriminating at all. It's all exculpatory. And so it's an absolute Brady violation. It undermines any type of fairness. One thing, and I'm sure you're sensitive to this too after what you've gone through, one thing that's important in our country is that the public have some modicum of confidence in law enforcement to either report crimes or cooperate. I mean, the government is destroying any report. I mean, listen, I have no disrespect to you or any of the police officers out there. I am so afraid of police. I've been in jail. I've been beaten up by them. I mean, if I see a police car, I pull over to the side of the road. I turn down the nearest side street and park. I am just absolutely traumatized by what's happened. And I used to never feel that way. I was just, just a normal person running a business, trying to build, great jobs in our community, and whatever, nerd, whatever, reading books about history or whatever I would do. But I never bothered anybody. And then if you would have told me the day before my company was raided that this would happen, I would have said you must be absolutely insane. This is ridiculous. But the fact is, and I'll give you even the probation people love my case. I'm like, why do you guys they drug tested me for 15 years? Why are you drug testing me? I've never done drugs in my life, ever. And I don't care what other people do. I don't do them. And so,
and I'm laughing. I'm not laughing at you. I'm going through the same exact thing. I have never done any illegal or narcotic whatsoever, and I'm being drug tested now also.
Right, and they want to drug test you because they're not afraid of you. They know you're not going to shoot anybody in the waiting room or whatever, and so they drug test. I asked the guy, I said, why are you guys drug testing me? He said, man, when we call you, you come right down. The boss makes me do 50 of these a week. Most people don't answer the phone. They don't come when they're supposed to. I got to go there in some girl's apartment. I'm like, this is ridiculous. So you guys drug test me because I don't do drugs? Yeah, you come right down. So it's ridiculous. What a waste of resources And the destruction of any confidence in the fair administration of justice in the country is a very, very serious problem. And the misallocation of resources, I mean, having a bunch of detectives going through, realtor forms is ridiculous. Meanwhile, Dawn Pasela, who's found dead, she's supposed to testify about misconduct. There's no investigation. I mean, you're a homicide investigator, Chief. So what would you do? You show up, the computer's missing, and there's 3 cell phones. I mean, what is that? Right by the body, there's 3 cell phones. What does that tell you? That it's a red flag, right? Drug activity.
And I want to jump while you're talking about this, and we're sort of like way ahead. But I want before you lose, I wanted to bring this up with you. And well, first off, and I took this off of the Seeking Justice.
Great,
just giving them credit for this. Yeah. So this is a photograph of a cell phone that apparently was found by Dawn's body, correct?
Correct. That is not her phone. She had a BlackBerry. The outbound call at 4:39 a.m. is supposedly after she died. The medical examiner said that there was rigor mortis and liver mortis, and by the time her body was discovered, she'd been dead for an extended period of time, maybe 20 hours. And this call may have been, there was somebody else in that apartment. Okay, because there's 2 cups of coffee. It's clear someone else was there. 3 cell phones were found, and this was not even collected. There was a picture taken of it, but apparently these cell phones were never collected.
So that was sort of, there was one thing I want to draw attention to, and it may be totally irrelevant because if we don't have the phone, I guess it doesn't really matter. But in the left, I'm sort of a tech geek, so in the left corner, I don't know if you guys can see my cursor, but in the top left corner, those are the bars for the signal. You've next to it, that's the data speed, 1x. And then the very next icon, I don't know if you've ever seen this, Tony, or not, that's a text message that's unread. And I don't know, again, I guess my question was, do you know where the cell phone is or who has custody of the cell phone? We don't know at this point.
No, I mean, Bob Frederick is our private investigator, and he believes that the officers in Parma would have conducted an investigation and they would have sent it out. But he thinks there was political interference and somebody told them not to collect the stuff and just leave it alone. But that's a very interesting point you made, and I'll definitely pass that along to Seeking Justice. No, this stuff was published so that people could look at it. That's a very brilliant point about there's a text message. No, the phones were never collected. And again, the thing is, okay, so you show up, there's a dead body. Maybe there's foul play, maybe there's not. Why not collect the evidence for the love of Pete? And then, pending what the medical examiner comes back with. So that's interesting that there's an unread text. We did not know that, and good call on that. But no one knows where the phones are. Nobody looked into the missing computer, her computer with evidence. We have a statement from this guy, Don Cleland, who headed up the task force. He says they gave Dawn hard drives to take home. Why would you give take all the evidence in 1,200 cases to your unsecure apartment in Parma. You're 23 years old here. It's ridiculous. So anyway, her computer with all the evidence is missing. It went vamoose.
Just so everybody has understanding. So if Parma Police, and again, we've sort of jumped ahead and hopefully we'll circle back so it makes all sense to everybody. But the Parma Police, if they've truly believed that this was an accidental or some sort of suicide, all of that property should have been released back to Dawn's next of kin. So anything in that apartment, the cell phones, the computer, everything should have been turned back over to Dawn's next of kin, which apparently it was not, is what you're saying.
Correct. And the police report, the initial one, says the case will be further investigated, and it apparently never was. But I mean, we've talked to a bunch of people that say you show up and there's a dead body and 3 cell phones in an apartment. That is a red flag. I mean, you know, right? I mean, what would you think if you showed up and there was these multiple, and her computer was missing? Her computer was missing. So, I mean, there's obviously something happened. And maybe somebody was sent into her apartment, didn't mean to kill her. Maybe things escalated. Maybe something happened, but maybe they wanted to know what she was going to say in court, or because she was supposed to appear. So she had an insider's account of what went on in this nonsensical economic crimes task force. And, look, you can indict anybody. If you really are going to go through every form you ever filled out your whole life, every tax return, every loan application, every car loan, every visa application, and say, my God, on line 17, look, it says you make this much, you really make this much. I mean, if you're going to start doing that, you couldn't put the whole country in jail. But anyway,
Well,
back to Dawn. So the police have refused to even turn it over. So the Cuyahoga County Sheriff said the case should be reopened. Ohio BCI said the case should be reopened. Parma says no, absolutely not. They're protecting political interference. They're protecting people. They're protecting.
And what makes
Mark Bennett.
utterly no sense to me whatsoever is, I started off as a traffic officer and made all my way up, and probably the funnest. No, I can't say funnest. The most exciting or demonstrative role that I ever played was homicide detective, and that was because I truly believed in giving families closure. They weren't going to get their loved ones back, but I was able to provide them at least with answers and closure. And the frustrating thing with like the Dawn situation, and I understand, and again we're sort of hopping out. I understand that possibly the prosecutor, not Mark Bennett, but
Dan Caceres. Yeah,
had possibly reached out and said, "Hey, she has some sort of alcohol problem," and any decent investigator, you show up on a homicide scene. Even police officers, like road officers, would say, "Hey, detective, this is what I found. This is what I think." Okay, that's entertaining to me. I appreciate that, but I'm not going to allow that to cloud any decision I make on where that goes with the investigation. And so it's frustrating to me that if conversations like that were had with the Parma police, that they would even entertain it. It shouldn't have affected their investigation or how they perform their investigation whatsoever. And
right. I live in an apartment building. Let's say the lady down the hall, which she's a very nice lady, but let's say she's a raging heroin addict. That doesn't mean that I should go murder her. Dawn is not the subject of the investigation. This trash talking of Dawn is terrible. That's someone's daughter. That's someone's sister. That's someone's friend. That's someone's cousin. That's terrible. And this is the thing. A core function of law enforcement is to determine whether or not a death is natural or not. That's a core function. Prosecuting realtors who supposedly duped JP Morgan into making no money down loans that they supposedly didn't allow, that they actually did, but they allowed sometimes. It's ridiculous. It's a bunch of nonsense. And so this is a total misallocation of resources, and you're exactly right. The family deserved closure. And if the evidence was explored at that time, you collect the phones, who owned the phones. You can easily do that with the physical phone. It would have answered these questions. In Parma, they say I'm a conspiracy theorist. I'm not. I want to know the truth. I want to know what happened. I'm not trying to, if you would have done your job when you should have back in the day, instead of protecting Dan Caceres, you wouldn't have to worry about it. But this is an old-fashioned Democratic machine, Bill Mason, Dan Caceres, Jimmy DeMora. This is the remnants of it in Parma. Bob Corey, the safety director in Parma, was the number 2 guy in the county prosecutor's office when Bill Mason was there. He loves Dan Caceres. They're buddies, and they're protecting Dan Caceres. And when they interview him, they don't write down what he said. So they don't memorialize any of the interviews, but they talked to him about this case. It's ridiculous. And yes, Dawn.
And the scary thing that what you're saying is it's still going on, Tony, because Bill Mason, Michael Malley is also deep roots in Parma, and so
Michael Malley is a total criminal. Michael Malley pretends to be a reformer around election time. Okay, Michael Malley's a joke because the Conviction Integrity Unit that was headed up by Judge Adrian, who's an honorable man, and trying to make sure that innocent people are cleared and guilty people are in jail, not innocent people in jail and guilty people going away. He walked out of that Conviction Integrity Unit and said it was a farce. I have proof that Dan Caceres is having sex with witnesses and using perjured testimony, okay? And I proved my innocence at a trial, and I still was stuck in jail for 10 years of legal wrangling. So, if they won't look at my case, we can't help you. They don't want to. They can. They don't feel like it. And O'Malley is tight with Bill Mason. And so they all say they're reformers, and they're not. It's a total joke. And really, this is a disgrace. Our community is being ravaged by wrongful convictions. We need to have economic development. We need to have jobs. I don't hear any of these politicians talking about this. Why can't we have an electric car factory in East Cleveland or in our community? We were an industrial powerhouse. Okay, how many of these old factories are going to be turned into loft housing? Can we please have some industrial base here? Columbus has this Intel factory, $20 billion. Why can't that happen here? We're on a port, we're on rail lines. We have a workforce that's traditionally been good at manufacturing. So the rebirth of industry is totally bypassing us. because of this.
And the lakefront. My wife and I were actually just talking. Look at Port Clinton towards Ottawa County, where the islands are. Look at what they've done with their lakefront, and Cuyahoga County still does nothing. They've done nothing to develop any of that.
It's a total disgrace, and it's a disservice to the community and the people who live here.
So I want to circle back around because we sort of skipped. I want to bring everybody that's listening or watching up to speed. So Dawn's illegally wiretapping you, and she has a conscience, and so at some point she reaches out to you and says, "Hey, this is what's going on with you, and I think these are the things that you need to look at." At one point, I think you described that she was actually scared, and she said, "Well, we're not going to talk for a while, but here's your homework. This is what you need to do." Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I was right. So in federal court, I was convicted. Judge Nugent, Don Nugent, who's a prosecutor, he thought it was hilarious that the government lost the computers. Oh, the fabled computers, ha ha. I mean, this federal court is a Soviet Union style thing. Let me tell you what happens with Don Nugent. I mean, first of all, there's a lawyer named Craig Weintraub who was representing one of my co-defendants. My lawyer, Jay Milano, signed some joint defense agreement. By the way, if you want to go to jail for a really long time and pay all of your money, you want to hire Jay Milano, okay? Flushing your money down the toilet is better than hiring Jay Milano, because if you flush the money down the toilet, you don't expect any work. This guy's a joke. He loves the prosecutors. Anyway, and they're having a great time. Ha ha. I'm supposed to go to jail, and they thought it was great. Anyway, long story short is I'm convicted in federal court for a myriad of reasons, one of which is the lawyers were representing everybody at the same time. Banks, government witnesses, and me. I'm saying I'm innocent. No. They had this joint defense, which I never agreed to. We're not going to point fingers at anybody else. Anyway, the whole thing was a joke, and we didn't have the information about Catherine Clover's affair with the prosecutor. I mean, any fair judge, and that's what Don Nugent is not, any fair judge would say the prosecutor sleeping with the witness that you're presenting as a fact witness in court makes a mockery out of the court, out of the Constitution, out of the country, out of anybody in law enforcement who's actually trying to do the right thing. By the way, Dan Caceres and Mark Bennett, here's one other thing they're so crooked about is they were afraid that some honest cop would interview a witness and actually take notes of what they would say. So Caceres and Bennett, they're supposed to be prosecutors, meaning present the government's case in court. They veered into an investigative role. They would just jump in the car and go interview people and not take notes. But if someone said, "Oh, Tony's no good," okay, great, we'll send you to the FBI. But Tony's innocent. Oh, okay, thanks. We'll call you if we need you. So this is unbelievable what went on in the case. But I lose in federal court because we don't have the computers. We don't have the evidence that the banks really weren't defrauded. We didn't know about Catherine Clover. Dawn comes forward. I'm convicted, but because I have no criminal history and it's a nonviolent offense, I'm still on bond pending sentencing. That's when Dawn comes forward and says, look, they're hiding all this evidence. They know you're innocent. You piss them off by going on TV and saying you're innocent. So Mark Bennett's allowed to have a press conference, by the way, just so you know. Dan Caceres is allowed to go breaking news live. But when I said, oh, this is crap, oh, no, you can't say that. So anyway, and Jay Milano kept telling me I was upsetting Mark Bennett. I said, are you guys serious? You're supposed to be badass defense lawyers. These people are destroying everything I worked for my entire life. They're destroying my reputation. I'm not going to make it easy for them to put me in jail. Don't worry about Mark Bennett's ego management. I mean, let's get evidence of innocence. Anyway, the lawyers did nothing, and I lost. But I wasn't sentenced yet. So Dawn comes forward, and she's like, and I said, well, you got to give me this proof of evidence that they're hiding. She's like, well, I've been taking it in my purse. This girl's taking evidence out of the prosecutor's office. They think they destroyed it. Okay, so when you fast forward, I'm imprisoned by Don Nugent. Then the second trial starts, Judge Daniel Gall. And Judge Gall was kind of skeptical of this too. He's like, we got murders and rapes, and we're talking about realtors using the wrong forms. I mean, he thought it was, probably a questionable, highly questionable use of government resources to prosecute realtors. And his bailiff one time said, oh, hide the children. The realtors are coming in for the pretrial. So anyway, long story short is at the second trial, I got all this evidence that Dawn and I prepared at my house before I was in prison. So I'm put in jail, and then I'm shipped all over the place, and I'm pulled back to the county jail. And then the second trial starts, and I have all this proof. Now, of course, Caceres and Bennett thought they got rid of it, so they didn't know. So So the lender told them they didn't even interview the supposed victim in the nation's largest mortgage fraud case until a couple weeks before the first trial. They said they allow the loans, that their employees are allowed to make these loans. Why am I supposed to go to jail? If you go to Starbucks and order off the menu, you didn't trick them into doing it. If the lenders allow these things, or their employees are allowed to make these no money down loans, or they offer them, Dawn found all this stuff. Look, they have it in their book. They are allowed. The government was saying it was illegal. We were duping lenders. The poor innocent bank didn't know people were not making a down payment or leaving with cash back. The lenders had these programs. So we were able to do two things at the second trial. One, we destroyed the government's theory of the bank as an innocent victim. They knew full well what was going on. So they're not duped. Fraud is concealing a material fact. You want to buy my house and there's water in the basement and I put a couch in front of it to hide it. That's fraud. Okay. Now, if I didn't hide it and I told you about it, you might still buy the house. You might pay less. You might get a contractor in to see, okay? So fraud is good. But if we say, hey, the guy has no money and he doesn't want to make a down payment, and they say approved, there's no fraud. And then on a count-by-count basis, Dawn said, probably everyone listening doesn't remember this, but I do because I'm 5,000 years old. But when I was a kid, Woody Hayes used to run the ball at Ohio State, 3 yards in a cloud of dust, hand the ball off 3 yards. Dawn said, we're going to grind it out. Just like Woody Hayes, just like the football team, count by count. Look, on this particular transaction, you signed off on it. On this particular transaction, you said it was okay for the borrower not to have a down payment. So we were able to throw their theory out and then throw out the count by count. We had to grind it out. I never would have done this without Dawn's help. I didn't know how to do this, and I didn't use a lawyer. She said, if you use a lawyer, you lose. They love the prosecutors. They'll tell the prosecutors you have all this. You've got to make the prosecutors think you don't have it, because they think they can steamroll you. So this was Caceres is caught lying over and over and over again. We never interviewed the bank. I said, Your Honor, this is ridiculous. This is the nation's largest mortgage fraud case. I supposedly stole $46 million. You mean nobody in the prosecutor's office ever bothered to pick up the phone and call this guy and ask, hey, are you a victim of a scheme? You just got to fly in from California and testify extemporaneously? Nonsense. And they said they didn't have it. And then I said, here, I have it. I'd like to approach the bench. So this is what happened in the second trial, but only because of Dawn. That's why I was exonerated at the second trial and caught lying over and over and over again. And then, of course, Dawn was very brilliant. She said, you've got to keep innocence separate from misconduct. So if you're guilty, go shoot a bunch of kindergartners, okay, and make an argument that the police guy screwed up the search warrant. Nobody cares, okay? If you're innocent, people care about misconduct. So she was brilliant. She said, first, we're going to prove misconduct. Then I'm going to come in and talk about the wrongdoing inside the prosecutor's office. Dawn was humiliated that she ever wore the wire. She was upset about it. She wanted to move forward with her life. She wanted to tell what she knew and move on. And she thought my case was screwed up, and she thought this whole task force was fatally flawed. She knew they were stealing the restitution. She said it was ridiculous. And they were hiding evidence, and it upset her that innocent people were going to jail. And so anyway, she wanted to help me, but not like, oh, Tony, you're so great. She wanted all these cases reviewed. She was going to come in. Hopefully I was exonerated. I would be released. I said, Dawn, we'll set up an office. We'll get a coffee pot and a legal pad or whatever, computer, or whatever we got to do. And we'll help. She wanted to help anyone who she thought was wrongfully convicted, and she wanted to drive change in the prosecutor's office, and she wanted to be done. She wanted to move forward with her life, and if she was alive today, she'd be some happy, successful woman. My friends thought she was going to be the governor of the state of Ohio. She was brilliant. She was very engaging to talk to. People really liked her a lot. She was extremely intelligent. She would have changed the world. The area would be better. The city of Cleveland would be a better place if Dawn was here today with all of her talents and abilities. And she wanted to come forward. And of course, Dan Caceres and Mark Bennett threatened her, where you're going to go to jail. Why? For being a defense witness? And again, supposedly you're allowed to come to court. A witness does not have to talk to attorneys, does not have to talk to the media, but supposedly is allowed to come to court. She said she was coming to court. She was bringing documents. And she said, Judge Gall is fair, and he will let me testify. Judge Gall, she said, he likes the steak, not too much seasoning. He really wants the hard truth, and we can and we can show the jury, we can prove. We're not going to allege misconduct. We're going to go hard facts. They're forging her name on the evidence log. There's an affair with this government witness, Clover, and she was going to blow the whistle on all this stuff. She said Dan Caceres was one of the biggest pigs she ever met, that he tried to have sex with her that he was using his position as a prosecutor to extract sexual favors from women. A criminal defendant cannot consent to a sexual relationship with a prosecutor who could put her in jail. And this is what Mark Bennett and Dan Caceres have made a career out of, using their authority to harass and exploit for sexual reasons interns and younger administrative colleagues or criminal defendants. Absolutely sickening.
So, everybody, that's a wrap for episode 9. I'm going to have the final conclusion of the interview with Tony Viola, episode 10. I also do have some records back from the Cuyahoga County Sheriff's Department, as well as the autopsy report from the medical examiner's office. Let me just check real quick, because little things bother me in my mind when I'm talking here. So, yes, it was the Cuyahoga County medical examiner's report. I couldn't remember if they were a medical examiner or the coroner's office at that point. But so 2012, they were apparently the medical examiner's office. They had already transitioned over. I am still, however, waiting for the reports from the Parma Police Department, which, again, seem to be overly delayed. Again, folks, this, I have to agree with Tony's analysis. Apparently Parma has pegged them as a conspiracy theorist. The issue is they just keep confounding the situation to make it appear to be a conspiracy. Her death could be natural. Could have been suicide. Or it could have been homicide. It was never investigated. I want to hopefully save my actual opinion analysis for episode 10 once we conclude. But I think it's pretty fair to say that no investigation was done. Had an investigation been performed by Parma Police Department, then we probably wouldn't be talking about it today, because we could have been a cold case, homicide. But other than that, you would think that they would want to put this to rest. So I'm not exactly certain what Parma's philosophy or theory is on that. Anyways, that's it for episode 9, and we will be back at you next week. Hope you guys had a great Memorial Day. Thanks for sticking around to the end, and make sure, if you like the content, please hit the subscribe button and the like button. And if you dislike something, I always have one dislike, just one. I actually think it's for somebody from the Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office, but one dislike all the time, every episode, one dislike, everybody else like. So if you're not from the Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office and you have some sort of constructive criticism, please feel free to leave it below in the messages and the comments. I'm all learning. Never said that I knew everything about this. So I appreciate it. See you next week.